This is the Gorilla from Telegrapher. Now, the Gorilla was the first model that we designed, and it took us many years to do it because we wanted it to be perfect. When we started the design process, we were considering what size to make first. It had to be a 3-way because it had to be a really high-end professional monitor. And it had to be able to use both from tracking to mixing and have enough bottom end also for mastering. So what we came up with was a 3-way with an 8.5-inch low-frequency driver and idealized mid and high-frequency drivers. This gives us enough bottom end to actually really hear the lowest octave, even if it's a little bit subtle. So for example, I'm a mastering engineer, and I'm currently mastering with the Gorilla, and it works great. All the speakers are designed to have extreme levels of headroom, and so the wattage of the amplifiers are rather high, not because you need it, but because when you have very powerful transients, for example, you need to have the headroom to handle that. So the Gorilla has 3 amplifiers, 500 watts, 500 watts, and 100. And that seems insane, unless you want it for the headroom, which is ideal, and it sounds awesome. If you look at the back of the speakers, you will notice there are no extra controls. There's no volume, no EQ, no phase shift, no high-pass filters, and that's for 2 reasons. Every circuit you add to the monitor changes its sound, degrades its sound, even a little bit. And all of these speakers are built by combining all kinds of small, subtle, cumulative changes, which is why it sounds really unusual and extraordinary. The other reason is that since we took such time in developing these speakers, we basically built it for you. We built in all of the sound analog domain for you. So when you position them in an ideal way in your room, they will come out sounding great. The next question is, for Gorilla, what is the ideal size control room? This is, of course, variable depending how it's built, how it's treated acoustically, but it's usually considered for medium-sized to large-sized control rooms. Now, since they're in midfield monitors, you often ideally would be about 6 feet away, 2 meters approximately from the speakers. So you have to play around a little bit with that. But when you get it, it's incredible. I mean, I remember the first time I heard them with their imaging, I kind of lost it. It's worth taking the time to properly position it in the room. Your mixes will translate very well. I used to have to check my mixes in the car, not anymore. I would check my masters in the car, not anymore, because they just translate. And that is a joy. It really saves you time. It makes you so much more productive in your workflow. And that's kind of a lot of what it's at. Yes, it should be a joy, but you need to be efficient to be a professional. Now, finally, one of the things that is a very positive result of the design is that the ear fatigue is very minimal. People have reported working hours and hours without any ear fatigue. Now, that comes from having very little distortion, which means that professional mixers, masters, any music professionals, or people who want to be music professionals can put in full days of work without hurting themselves or affecting the quality of their work. Now, these are the first speakers that my wife loves even more than I do. Even in the living room, my studio, she's on board fully. And that's a big plus. Now, if you think the Gorilla is great, if this impresses you, you need to check out the Gorilla S, which is built on the Gorilla you know and love, but it has a second low-frequency driver for larger spaces and greater headroom needs. I mean, all of our speakers have great headroom, but Gorilla S blows me away. When I was working with the prototypes, I did not want to give them up for any reason. They had to drag it out of my hands, and I'm a little ashamed about that. So we started with the Gorilla that you know and love, and we added a second low-frequency driver, 8.5 inches, just like the original Gorilla. Now this gives you a lot more power, a lot more headroom, so if you've got a big space to work in and need a lot of energy to make it really pop, the Gorilla S, I think, will do very well for you. For more information about the Gorilla and Gorilla S, visit telegrapher.com.